opening night,
where both Republicans and Democrats begin their conventions, heads bowed in prayer.
Cardinal Timothy Dolan delivers the prayer to begin the Republican National Convention. We have a recap and analysis of the first evening, plus a closer look at the party's 2020 platform. Kremlin responds, what Russian officials are saying after one of Vladimir Putin's main rivals is allegedly poisoned. And Pilgrim's Progress, good news for the faithful and the people of a town in France. On EWTN News Nightly for Tuesday, August 25th, 2020. Good evening. Thanks for joining us tonight. I'm Tracy Sable reporting from the White House. Night one of the Republican National Convention brings praise for President Donald Trump and dire predictions of what an America under the leadership of Democrats would look like.
Donald Trump has always put America first, and he has earned 4 more years as president.
Biden, Harris, and the rest of the socialists will fundamentally change this nation.
President Trump also made 2 appearances last night in taped videos with frontline workers in the battle against the coronavirus, as well as 6 former U.S. hostages whose freedom was obtained during his administration.
We must, in thanksgiving, dear God, for democracy, as we ask your hand, Almighty Father, upon this convention and the nominees of both parties, and his wisdom upon an electorate so eager to perform its duty of faithful citizenship.
The night began with a prayer led by Cardinal Timothy Dolan of New York. He prayed for both parties, for those suffering with COVID and for the unborn. Philip Crowther, international affiliate reporter for the Associated Press, joins me now with a look at last night and a preview of tonight. Philip, welcome back. Good to see you. So Republicans wasted no time in getting right to it, making some dire predictions of what will happen if Democrats are elected to the White House.
Yeah, it certainly was a dark vision that we saw from Republicans of a potential Joe Biden presidency. And what we also saw was a division we already knew about, of course, between Republicans and Democrats, but different worldviews entirely. You could even say that they're living in different worlds right now. I'll give you one example. Their views of how the coronavirus pandemic is being fought right now in the United States. There were many speakers at the Republican convention who spoke of the president's heroic attempts to stop that outbreak, whereas Democrats, of course, last week saw the president as largely being to blame for that ever-increasing number of deaths in the United States. But you're right to say that those warnings of a Joe Biden presidency were everywhere, warnings of violence in American cities spreading to the suburbs, warnings of open borders, of voter fraud, etc., all sorts of things that only to a certain degree, of course, are true, but the picture that was painted was a very negative one indeed. So who can stand in the way of that negativity? Well, maybe somebody like the president, at least according to some of the speakers on stage in Washington, the likes of the young conservative activist Charlie Kirk, saying that the president was the bodyguard of Western civilization. That is the kind of bombastic language, of course, we are used to from conventions from both political parties.
Well, one of the speakers last night was former UN Ambassador Nikki Haley. She had some strong words of support for President Trump and also some harsh criticism for people who say America is racist. How did she use her own personal experiences, Philip, to make her point?
Yeah, her story is an interesting one and maybe a vital one right now. She said she was the proud daughter of Indian immigrants, a brown person in a black and white world, said Nikki Haley, the former UN ambassador. She is essentially trying to prove at this point that you can be somebody in the Republican Party who wholeheartedly supports the president, but still, in a sense, be a member of the Republican Party from before Donald Trump, and maybe even be a very important member of the Republican Party post Donald Trump. Don't forget that she might very well have ambitions for the presidency in 2024. Now, speaking of race, she did say that she had been the victim of discrimination, but did try to ram home this message that the United States is still a welcoming country to immigrants.
Senator Tim Scott also spoke last night. He's the only black Republican in the Senate, and he was one of a number of African-American speakers last night who talked about opportunity and the possibilities for the country if President Trump is reelected. How are his comments being received?
Oh, they went down very well on members of both political parties. His speech was a particularly strong one. It was the very last one. It was the primetime keynote address, if you will. Senator Tim Scott of South Carolina, like Nikki Haley, of course, from the same state, might have some higher political ambitions of his own, it must be stated as well. But he is in a particularly interesting position, of course, right now, being, as you said, the only black Republican member of the U.S. Senate, and somebody who works with the president on police reform, on policing, for example, on criminal justice reform. He is also somebody, because of that role he plays in the U.S. Senate, that he can criticize the likes of the Democratic nominee Joe Biden on the issue of race. For example, when Joe Biden did say, and I'm paraphrasing, that if you support the president, you can't really be black. That is something that the senator brought up yesterday specifically. He is somebody who can do that. And he is also somebody, along with Nikki Haley, who is supposed to show that diversity is still possible within a Trump administration and within possibly another 4 years of a Trump administration. Of course, a lack of diversity has been a criticism of this administration for a long time now.
Now, Philip, less than 30 seconds left. Quickly, what can we expect tonight?
Well, it's going to be a family affair, this one tonight. We're going to hear not from one, but 4 Trumps. From the president, we've been told more than once there'll be an appearance. The main speech, of course, is from Melania Trump from the Rose Garden, but there'll also be speeches from Eric and Tiffany Trump. I should also mention a controversial speak from the Secretary of State, Mike Pompeo. It is very unusual for the top diplomat to give a political speech, but he will have recorded a message in Jerusalem, of all places, that will be played during this second night of the Republican convention.
Now, Philip Crowther, international affiliate reporter for the Associated Press, thank you so much. Well, the RNC 2020 platform looks very similar to 2016's. In fact, it's the exact same. Nothing has changed in the 50-plus page document, which means traditional family values remain front and center. White House correspondent Owen Jensen continues our team coverage.
Tracy, the RNC says the pandemic is the main reason a new platform was not adopted for 2020. Just not enough delegates in attendance to debate the main issues. Still, they are 100% in support of the platform adopted just 4 years ago.
This election is about who can preserve the values, principles, and institutions that make America great.
Among the key items on their platform, religious liberty. The platform stating the Bill of Rights lists religious liberty with its rights of conscience as the first freedom to be protected.
People of faith are under attack. You're not allowed to go to church, but mass chaos in the streets gets a pass.
And when it comes to protecting human life, the platform states very clearly we assert the sanctity of human life and oppose the use of public funds to perform or promote abortion.
The American way of life means you follow the law, you work hard, you honor God, you raise your kids with strong values.
Another Republican goal, defending marriage against an activist judiciary. The platform states traditional marriage and family, based on marriage between one man and one woman, is the foundation for a free society. And with Election Day in just over 2 months,
I pray every night that God gives him more time. Give him 4 more years.
Other key items in the platform: choice in education, preserving Medicare and Medicaid, and saving Social Security. At the White House, Owen Jensen, EWTN News Nightly.
Joining me now on Skype with his thoughts on the GOP platform and the first night of the Republican convention is Christopher Bedford, senior editor for The Federalist. Chris, welcome back. Good to see you. So what are your thoughts on the Republican Party's decision to stick with the 2016 platform?
There are good things in this and there are bad things in this. This is a win for Jared Kushner, who was pushing for this because he didn't want to rock the boat. He didn't want to change things. He didn't want to risk any kind of party fighting during the RNC. He was comfortable with the platform they had run in 2016. Social conservatives, to your point, made huge gains in 2016, putting abortion front and center, even including the defense of traditional marriage that a lot of the more liberal members of the Republican Party would have liked to have moved beyond. Unfortunately, for a lot of social conservatives outside of the White House, the Senate and the House of Representatives didn't really, or especially the Senate under Mitch McConnell, didn't actually want any of those fights and largely avoided them. In 2020, though, we've seen a couple of amazing changes in this country, not simply in support of the police, but in more specifically Catholic issues like gender reassignment for underage children. These are the kind of things that we weren't dealing with in 2015, and some social conservatives feel that the 2020 platform really leaves them behind on that.
Yeah, Chris, and many of the speeches last night also spoke to the values of religious liberty and protecting life, messages that really should play well with the president's base.
The president came out originally, obviously running as a rather pro-abortion, not conservative socially candidate. Really switched in the Nevada debate against Hillary Clinton, coming out strong for social conservatives, and has been someone who's benefited them throughout his administration. The first night of the RNC continued that theme completely, and I expect to see that further. Donald Trump is probably the most vocal opponent of abortion we've seen in decades in the White House, and I think that will continue.
And Chris, there were also several efforts to highlight the inclusive nature of the party last night. Let's talk about the importance of that in this election year.
It was kind of wild to see this because we saw the huge amount of Black, Hispanics, and immigrants, Republicans and Democrats who took the stage last night. And it was wild to watch the different channels. I had all of the channels on, switching back and forth between them from just as I did during the Democratic National Convention. Those things went uninterrupted, the DNC, on almost all the stations, on PBS, on CNN and MSNBC. But they chose to interrupt frequently during the Republican National Convention to talk about how racist the president was. This stood in stark contrast to the messaging we were hearing from his strongest supporters, including family friends, including the Georgia Black Democrat, including a Cuban immigrant or refugee who were standing with the president and calling out all the things that he's done for uniting people. I think that's obviously going to be a major platform of the Republican Party, and I would not be surprised if President Trump wins more Black and more Hispanic men this round than he did 4 years ago.
Chris, we only have about a minute left, but I do want to get to this last question. Last week, the Democrats said that the Trump administration had really shown a lack of leadership as it relates to the COVID-19 pandemic. Do you think the speakers last night were able to kind of change that narrative?
Last night was great on narrative for that because last night was very policy-centered. I think a lot of the non-politicians shone through. Politicians famously say nothing while speaking in great platitudes. A lot of the regular people they had on there, whether they were nurses or people who'd been sick or people who benefited from cures, really pushed back against that, drawing in personal stories that pulled in the audience, and then bringing them back into how President Trump's policies impacted them personally and why they'd be supporting him. They stole the night, and I hope to see the Republican Party continue pushing forward people like that as this race goes on.
Well, Chris, thanks so much for your time. Christopher Bedford, senior editor for The Federalist. Thank you again for your analysis. And just a reminder to stay with EWTN News Nightly all week long. We'll have comprehensive coverage of the Republican National Convention, including reports and analysis. Coming up, 2 more members of Congress have been diagnosed with coronavirus. Puerto Rico's representative in Congress, Jennifer Gonzalez, announced yesterday that she has tested positive for COVID-19. She is the latest in a list of U.S. lawmakers to test positive for it, even as they work to help Americans handle the effects of the virus. Capitol Hill correspondent Eric Rosales reports.
Republican Dan Muser also announced over the weekend that he tested positive for COVID-19. The congressman from Pennsylvania was on the campaign trail in support of President Trump. He says he's following the CDC health and safety guidelines and is working from home in quarantine. Beginning with Congressman Ben McAdams, who tested positive on March 14th, there are now a dozen representatives in the U.S. House that have contracted COVID-19, including most recently Congressman Rodney Davis, who tested positive August 5th.
I thought my scratchy throat was just normal until I got tested. It could be, but I will be honest, I have no symptoms that I feel whatsoever.
In the U.S. Senate, just 2 senators have tested positive. Senator Rand Paul and 5 days ago, Senator Bill Cassidy.
I think it's scriptural that we should, at this point, be protecting others.
EWTN spoke with the Louisiana senator, who is a medical doctor, in March about preserving COVID-19 transmission.
If you sneeze into your sleeve, wash your hands regularly, do all the things that we've been instructed to keep from getting infected and infecting others. And when you do that, you'll save lives.
More than 45 congressional lawmakers have quarantined to be cautious. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi and Democrats want more than $3 trillion in a coronavirus relief bill.
We only wish that the administration shared our values in terms of what we need to do to crush this virus.
Republicans say it's not about values, but Democrats want unnecessary add-ons that have ballooned the bill's price tag. Negotiations remain stalled. This month, Senator Cassidy, along with 4 bipartisan co-sponsors, introduced the Suppress COVID-19 Act to give $25 billion to states. The Suppress COVID-19 Act now heads to the Senate Judiciary Committee, one of several bills introduced to help end the spread of the virus. From the Capitol, Eric Rosales, EWTN News Nightly.
China says it may join the United Nations program called COVAX to coordinate development of a vaccine for COVID-19.
关于你提到的这个个案呢，建议你向我们主管的。
A foreign ministry spokesman says China supports the development of healthcare in developing countries, and China is actively fulfilling its commitment to produce vaccines. The Prime Minister of Spain is offering help to officials running the country's 17 regions. Pedro Sanchez wrapped up his first cabinet meeting since the summer recess and says soldiers from Spain's armed forces will be available to reinforce contact tracing of new COVID-19 infections. Up next, why Secretary of State Mike Pompeo is in the North African country of Sudan, and a report from the first pilgrimage to Lourdes, France since the coronavirus crisis began. The U.S. Secretary of State tweets that he is on the first official flight from Israel to Sudan. Mike Pompeo arrived in the capital today. He is the most senior American official to visit Sudan since last year's ouster of dictator Omar al-Bashir. Secretary Pompeo is discussing ties between Sudan and Israel. He is also there to show support for Sudan's fragile transition to democracy. The flurry of diplomatic visits to Lebanon continues weeks after the catastrophic explosion, and today it was Qatar's turn.
من أول المتواجدين في لبنان لدعم الجهود.
The foreign minister says Qatar was among the first to send a rescue team and doctors. He met with Lebanon's Christian president, Michel Aoun. Yesterday, Italy's defense minister paid a visit. Support has poured in after the blast destroyed large parts of Beirut, killing over 180 people and leaving more than 250,000 homeless. The Knights of Columbus is sending $250,000 for disaster relief to Lebanon. Supreme Knight Carl Anderson says the explosion earlier this month is a threat to vital Christian community there. Lebanon is home to some of the oldest Christian communities, and about 40% of the population is Christian. As always, we thank the Knights of Columbus for its support of EWTN News Nightly. The Kremlin is rejecting accusations of any involvement in the alleged poisoning of Russian opposition leader Alexei Navalny. Doctors say no poison was found in lab tests. Navalny, a fierce critic of President Vladimir Putin, is now in a coma in a Berlin hospital. His supporters say the Kremlin was behind his sickness. The head of the International Atomic Energy Agency met with Iranian officials, and Iran says it will not accept any more demands beyond its commitments under the nuclear deal. The U.S. is pushing for so-called snapback sanctions for violating the deal. A small protest took place in Rome as the Italian Foreign Affairs Minister and his Chinese counterpart met earlier today.
My arrival and the message I bring in here is very clear. We need to address the human rights violation to China.
Nathan Law, a Hong Kong activist, and other Italian parliament members urged the discussion to address the problems in Hong Kong and demand action. And finally tonight, after several months of being on lockdown because of the coronavirus crisis, there are signs of hope in Lourdes, France. The Diocese of Rome is leading nearly 200 people on the first pilgrimage in months. Cardinal Angelo De Donatis is leading the 3-day trip. The Cardinal says he received a phone call shortly before leaving from the Holy Father, who asked the group to pray for Our Lady's help around the world. Joining us now is someone who is on the pilgrimage, Father Giovanni Bialo from the Diocese of Rome's Pilgrimage Office. Father, welcome back to the show. Good to see you. So tell us, what is it like being on a pilgrimage again?
Yes, good morning. So we are here with a big group of pilgrims from the Diocese of Rome with the Cardinal, Vicar Cardinal of the Holy Father. And we are visiting this holy place, this wonderful holy place where the Holy Virgin speaks with her grace since many years. So the people are very happy to be here and to pray, especially in front of the grotto. The presence of the Cardinal naturally is a big help. Because it's really a pilgrimage, official pilgrimage of the Diocese of Rome, and also the Cardinal with his really deep spirituality can help us to enter in the relationship with the Holy Virgin and through the Holy Virgin with the Lord.
Father, do you know how the people in the town of Lourdes are doing right now?
The people here in Lourdes, yes, so we didn't find so many people here in the sanctuary. Maybe we are the first group coming from another country, so a big pilgrimage. We are quite 200 people, and we find pilgrims, especially from France, some small group, but naturally we are used to find in Lourdes so many people.
Also, Father, why was it important for the Diocese of Rome to resume pilgrimages?
We organize in Rome the pilgrimage, and many people are being ready to come. So the difficulty, the pandemic that we had in the last months is not been an obstacle to come to a holy place. So the grace of the Lord continue to be very strong in these places, like Lourdes, that in all the world can be a source of new life for many people.
Besides your current pilgrimage to Lourdes, are there any other pilgrimages planned for you?
So other pilgrimage in other parts of the world, you mean?
Yes.
Yes, so now we are here in Lourdes and we are waiting to go with the pilgrims in different important holy places like Holy Land, like Fatima. We are simply waiting the permission to enter in these countries, and we have to recognize that so many people are waiting to participate to this wonderful and profound experience of spirituality.
Well, Father, thank you so much for your time today. We really appreciate it. Father Giovanni Bialo from the Diocese of Rome's Pilgrimage Office. Thank you again, Father.
Thank you so much. Have a nice day.
We thank you for watching tonight. For the entire EWTN News Nightly team, I'm Tracy Sable at the White House. Good night and God bless.